Welcome to the world of CompuTutor. I'm Brent Seltzer. I congratulate you on the purchase of your IBM personal computer. It's an investment into the future that will pay for itself just as quickly as you learn to operate it. There are really only a couple of tough elements to deal with when learning to use a microcomputer. The first is getting it from the store to your home or office. Amazing, isn't it? How all these miniaturized high-technology components always seem to come in a box that's just a little longer than the reach of your arms and just a little higher than the trunk of your car. However, you've now passed that first hurdle, and from here on, it does get easier. If you're concerned that you're going to have to spend hours and hours of time learning computer technology theory just to operate your machine, relax. The object of this CompuTutor program is to teach you the basics of using your machine, not the basics of building it. Because trial and error is still the most effective method of education, this CompuTutor program is designed for you to play as often as you need to so that you can see any segment or specific operation of using your machine again and again until you're comfortable with the procedure. We recommend that you first watch this tape all the way through one time without trying to use your machine. That'll give you an opportunity to see what you'll be learning and what you'll require in the way of backup materials. Then, set up your computer, even if only temporarily, in the same room with your video cassette machine and television, so that you can watch and participate on your machine at the same time. So, let's begin. Just imagine that by some good fortune, you are now the proud owner of the local library in your town, and all the librarians work for you, bringing you any and all of the information stored in the thousands of books on the shelves, and delivering that information in whatever kind of order or format you ask for. Now imagine that same library building and its team of librarians compressed to the size of the machine you just bought. Because like that library building, your computer can be filled with large amounts of information. And instead of waiting hours, days, and sometimes weeks for that information, it takes only minutes. That's just what your computer is all about. The high-speed storage and retrieval of information. You might find it interesting to note that your microcomputer represents the sum total of over 150 years of research and development. Now, that's true, over 150 years. See, back in 1834, a British mathematician named Charles Babbage invented a mechanical device that would eventually give birth to the first design of the first analytical computer. The machine he built was designed to add, subtract, multiply, and that all-time favorite, divide. However, this sort of Rube Goldberg contraption had a little trouble with the multiplying and dividing. That was because it was all moving parts that had to be precision made. So the first model tended to shake so hard during the multiplication and division process that it nearly fell off the table. Well, a lot of years and a lot of effort went into making a more refined version of the computer. Along with that, by World War II, the engineers at Sperry Rand had developed an electric card sorting device that seemed to help. From that warehouse full of parts came an even more refined version that in the late 1950s could sort through and cross-index hundreds of cardboard cards called punch cards. The engineers called them punch cards because they had to punch little holes in them for the mechanical sorting process. In fact, you'll find that a lot of computer terms used today were invented for verbal convenience. And I'll be telling you more about that as we go on. But giving credit where it's due, the first time Americans really had a chance to see a computer was back around 1958, thanks to veteran TV host Art Linkletter. He introduced UNIVAC on his Saturday night program, People Are Funny. The great electromechanical brain UNIVAC was used to match up single men with single women, all of whom were searching for ways not to be single. And so computer dating was born. I only mention this to you in case you think that computer people have no sense of romance. Oh, no. In fact, it was a very romantic way for a couple of movie characters played by Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn to meet in the film called Desk Set. From the late 50s right up to today, Hollywood has represented the computer in many different ways. From the flashing lights and spinning wheels of TV's Captain Video to the soft-spoken but black-hearted HAL 9000 of the sci-fi classic 2001: A Space Odyssey. Don't worry, your IBM-PC is much more user-friendly than HAL. And right up to the lovable R2-D2 of Star Wars. The computer has been growing with all of us, And as computers grew in stature, they shrunk in size. And today, the same kind of computer that took up 2 floors of a building just to match boyfriends and girlfriends on TV is no larger or even as powerful as the computer you're about to use. You know, a wise man once said that a thing is known by what it does. And what your computer will do for you is to store and retrieve large amounts of data in short periods of time. And the list of applications is virtually as long as your imagination is wide. Keep that in mind as you begin to discover how to use your IBM personal computer. Now, before you begin to hook up your computer, I want to talk to you just a bit about computer terminology. Do you remember a little earlier when I mentioned to you that getting your machine from the store to your home or office was among the more difficult aspects of using your computer? Here comes the second one, computer terminology. See, the inventors, designers, engineers, and builders of computers seem to have created a language of letters, numbers, and symbols that are as Greek to most of us as, say, Greek, come to think of it. For example, when you hear the term basic, you probably think of the word basic. Well, Webster's New World Dictionary defines the word basic as meaning fundamental or essential. However, when you hear the computer term basic, it's an acronym or a word formed from the letters of a series of words. BASIC, in computer terms, stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. And this is just one of the languages that is used to create the programs you run on your computer. You see, the engineers who designed and built these micro wonders developed a kind of shorthand, abbreviated sentences into words and words into letters. But I think after a while you'll be able to figure out a lot of these words for yourself. To show you how logically some of these terms came into existence, let's go over a few of the more common computer terms. For example, in a little bit you'll learn to boot up your machine. Don't panic. All that means is starting with a computer that is powerless and turning on the power, preparing it to follow your commands. That's one of my favorite things about computers. You get to command them. Booting up is a term taken from the old mountaineers' expression for when climbers reached the end of the rope. They would use the straps off their climbing boots to make a loop on the rope, catch their foot in it, and start climbing up the rope again. So when a computer program was written to start up the system of a computer, it took the name of the bootstrap program. When you boot up your computer, you're starting up the rope of computing. Earlier, I promised you no long technical lectures, and I'm going to keep that promise. So without putting you through a long series of diagrams, I thought you should know approximately how the computer works. Actually, it seems to work like your own brain. It has a central processing unit called the CPU, which coordinates all of the information and sends it where it should go. The information in a computer is stored in its memory. That's like your memory. The computer has 2 kinds of memory. The first is called read-only memory, or ROM. Read-only memory is built into the machine, usually at the factory, and it's usually permanent, forever. It tells the machine how to be a machine. You have ROM too. When you were born, you didn't have any real conscious memory or experience, but you knew how to breathe, make your heart pump, your eyes work, your fingers and toes move, and of course, keep the diaper service busy. That was your survival memory. Well, in a sense, that's what ROM is all about. Next comes random access memory, or RAM. That's the part of the machine's memory that is accessible to all the information or experiences you put into it. It's like all the experiences you remember since birth, or at least slightly thereafter. In the computer, RAM is the same thing. It's memory of what information you put in the machine on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to show you how the terms get created and the language of computerese is born. However, you don't need to use computerese to use a computer any more than you need to know how to strip a carburetor, flush a cooling system, or change the points and plugs of a car just to drive it. You learned how to boot up or turn on your hi-fi, and you figured out how to store or record movies and TV shows on the RAM of your videotape machine. So learning a few of these computer terms won't be that difficult. The best way to use this CompuTutor program is to stop the machine and rewind to any point and play it as many times as you want, allowing you to learn at your own pace. I'll be right here for you until you put me back in the box. In the next segment, you'll be setting up your machine. So take a minute and think about where to put it. You should place the machine somewhere that's convenient and comfortable, a place where you have plenty of light and electrical outlets, the grounded kind with the 3 holes for the 3-prong plugs that come with the equipment. Also, pick a place that makes it easy for you to look directly at the monitor screen. And put it at a height that's good for your hands. You don't want to get wrung out wrists after a short shot at the keyboard. By the way, you should know that extreme heat or cold is not fun for your computer. Temperatures above 90 degrees can cause your machine to crash. Not on the floor. That's just a slang term for any time your machine stops operating properly. And that could cost you all the time and effort you've put into working on a particular program. The result is that you could lose whatever current material is in the machine's random access memory at that time. Temperatures below 60 degrees and your computer may be too cold to start, like a car on a winter day. Even if it does start, it could be very sluggish. So try to avoid putting your computer near hot air ducts, radiators, direct sunlight, and of course, moving glaciers. You should consider another thing called power spikes. You know that AC, or alternating current, comes through the electrical outlets in your home or office, and it does alternate. And sometimes when power goes up or down all of a sudden, which happens nearly every day, it could affect your computer. So, the next time you go to the computer store, ask about a surge box. It plugs into the wall, your computer plugs into it, and that should prevent those power spikes from causing any problems. Something else to consider. Whether you own a home or rent, better call your insurance agent and make sure your insurance policy covers your computer. In most cases, your current insurance won't cover it. Last thing before we move on, save all those cartons and packing materials your microcomputer came packed in, just in case you discover a defect or problem with the machine in the next week or so. You'll find it a lot easier to take back in the box, easier to carry, and easier to get replaced. And don't forget to fill out all of those warranty cards and send them in to the manufacturer. At the beginning of our program, I congratulated you for getting your computer. Now, I congratulate you for sitting through this little orientation. Coming up, we'll be assembling the equipment and then getting ready to use your machine. So you might want to stop the tape here, review this segment if you like, find a place to put the machine, and maybe even take a quick break before moving on. Don't worry about me. I told my mom I'd be home late. Welcome back to CompuTutor. Did segment 1 whet your appetite? Good, because at the end of this segment, we'll order out. In this segment, you'll be taking a tour of your machine and then assembling the equipment in preparation to use it. There are a few things you should have standing by. Some diskettes, usually a box of 10 is a good start. Paper and ribbons for your printer, and some cleaning supplies, such as a bottle of anti-static and a disk drive cleaning kit. If the salesperson at the store didn't sell you these things, give them another chance. Now, it would be very handy to keep your owner's manual that came with the machine nearby, because I'll be referring you to that from time to time. All right, let's get down to business. You may have already removed your computer from its packing carton and have it completely assembled. Or maybe the salesperson at the store assembled it for you. Even so, it might be a good idea to stay with this part of our program. It'll give you a chance to make sure that you have all the information down pat. Look at all this stuff. You know, you could read any one of billions and billions of different technical books about the internal workings of a computer. However, there's a much simpler way to approach this information. Imagine the inside of a computer being much like the inside of a human body. At the head of the computer is the central processing unit, the CPU. It's the real brain of the computer. It directs all of the information in and out of the main memory. That's where all the read-only memory, ROM, and the random access memory, RAM, is stored. The power pack inside the computer is like the heart of the body, pumping power, like blood, in appropriate amounts to all elements of the computer. To learn more about it, check the owner's manual descriptions in Section 3 of your Guide to Operations, which explains in more technical detail the inner workings of your machine. Now, here come some of those computer terms. Hardware and software. What are they? What's the difference? Well, hardware refers to the machine and its peripherals. A peripheral is anything that plugs into the computer, like the disk drives, or the printer, or the screen. They're all pretty hard, and so they're called hardware. Software is the reference to the programs you run on your computer, which come on these diskettes called floppy disks. We call them floppy disks because, well, they're kind of floppy. I'll be talking more about this a little later on in our program. I think the easiest way to relate to the difference between the two, hardware and software, is your own videotape machine. The cassette machine itself with the tuner timer, that's the hardware. The actual video cassettes you put in the machine, well, that's like the floppy diskette that holds the software. And the movies or TV shows you record on the cassette, that's like the program instructions we call software. The biggest thing you'll notice is the television screen or the monitor. You can call it either one. And then, of course, there's the favorite technical term, the CRT. By the way, that stands for cathode ray tube. In fact, that happens to be the name of every television picture tube. But don't go looking for the Late Show on your microcomputer. In a way, the CRT is really like the mouth of the computer. When the machine wants to communicate with you, it does all of its talking right up here on the screen. Sometimes it may even beep at you. Down here is the keyboard, sometimes called the keypad. It looks just like a typewriter keyboard because it is just like a typewriter keyboard. Now you'll notice that most of the keys look like a typewriter keyboard, and there are others that don't. In a little while we'll tour that keyboard and show you what all those keys are for. You will speak to your computer through the keyboard. That's how it hears you giving it commands. Don't bother talking to it. You'll have to press the keys to get your message across. Here are the disk drives. They're kind of like little record players that record as well, so you can store information and bring it out again and again. It's in these little disk drives that the floppy disks do their business. In fact, you could think of these little disk drives as filing rooms, and the floppy disks as file cabinets, and the material you store on the floppy diskettes as the actual files. Right now, let's put our attention on the hardware. Because you won't be able to pass through the television screen and sit here at this machine to get the hands-on experience, I want you to meet my assistant, Das Mix. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. You look terrific. Love the manicure. Here on the videotape, he'll be playing your part. Of course, you'll appear live in your own home version. By watching our friend, you'll be able to see what he's doing, which is what you should be doing, usually. Now let's move on and get all this equipment assembled. The smart folks at IBM made it real easy for you to connect your machine. Before you do anything else, check all those cords, especially this spiraled patch cord on the keypad. Whoa, 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 whoa. Give it a little tug just to make sure that it's okay, like my friend did. In fact, it's a good idea to check the plug areas of all the cords, just to be on the safe side. Now, let's take a look at the back of the machine. We'll start with the keyboard patch cord, which goes here in this round hole marked keyboard. Not cassette machine, no, keyboard. Go ahead and insert it using this little notch at the top of the jack to match up to the top of the hole. Good. You can use either a monochrome monitor or a color monitor, depending on the signal board you ordered when you bought your machine. We'll show you both hookups, starting with the monochrome or green phosphor monitor. You'll hook up the monitor in two places. Taking this first cord with the 6 little pins in a casing that looks like the letter D, and line it up with this output slot, which we've located second from the right. At this point, you're ready to take the power cord from the monitor and plug it in over at the left in the receptacle marked auxiliary. Good. Now all you have to do is take the power cord of your computer and plug the receiver end, with the holes in it, lined up with this receptacle over here. Now, if you're using a color monitor, you'll attach the same kind of D-shaped receptacle, except it will have 9 pins, and it will be hooked up in the same place we showed you. Your dealer might have installed it in any of the slots, along with the composite signal phono jack that can be used for a monochrome monitor. Then the monitor's video power plug goes in this same receptacle we showed you just a few moments ago at the far left. Now let's get our printer hooked up. For our purposes, we're using an IBM monochrome monitor, and in this setup, the printer connection is on the slot with the monitor connection. This slot, second from the right in the back, is also like a big D. So make sure you line up the printer cable the same way. Go ahead. Good. Depending on the monitor and monitor card you're using, the locations of these slots could be different. So if you have a monochrome card, the printer connection is the large D-shaped connection just below the monitor connection. If you have a color monitor, the slot for that doesn't include a printer connection. You'll find that D-shaped connection in one of the other slots. If your dealer hasn't already explained the setup to you, give him a call. Now, let's go back to the printer. Simply put the other end of the printer patch cord, which also has the shape of a big D, over here in the back of the printer. That's right. You're ready to plug both plugs, one from the computer and one from the printer, into the grounded wall outlet, the one with the 3 holes. Or plug it into your surge box. Now, you might want to check your owner's manual description of the process in Section 2 entitled Setup. You've done a great job putting your machine together. You should rerun this segment of CompuTutor one more time to make sure, and read over Section 2 of your IBM owner's manual regarding assembly. Otherwise, why not take a break before we boot up and learn the general machine operation? If you like, you can head out to the kitchen for a bite to eat. I wouldn't mind that myself before we go into the next segment of CompuTutor. You don't have to worry about parking. You just need a warm glove compartment. On the other hand, welcome back to CompuTutor. In our last segment, you really put it all together, equipment-wise. And now it's time to boot up and go to work, because now you're ready to turn on your machine. Your IBM off-on switch is on your right side toward the back of the machine. Now, when you flick it up, 3 things should happen. That is, they should happen over a period of 30 seconds. First, and just after a few seconds, the disk drives start to make a whirring sound. And then the machine will beep at you, just to let you know it's with you. The little red light on the A disk drive should come on. That's the first one, or the one on the left. You'll notice that we've labeled these disk drives A and B to make it easier for you to see. Finally, the IBM signature in the upper left corner will appear, along with these 10 markers at the bottom of the screen. They correspond to the 10 function keys I'll be showing you in a minute. Now, if these things didn't happen, first, try to adjust the brightness and contrast with the 2 knobs on the monitor. That's right. If that doesn't work, then turn off your machine and wait 30 seconds and repeat the sequence. If it still doesn't work, call the dealer. You may need help from the service department. Notice this flashing line? It's called the cursor. That's a pointer. And it's used to point to what comes next, or where the next character will appear. You're ready to start learning your keyboard. As we mentioned earlier, it looks like a typewriter keyboard that has a bunch of extra keys. Right now, type in your name to get the feel of the keyboard. Type it as though you're using a regular typewriter. Kind of fun, isn't it? Now here's another exercise. Press a letter key, any key, and hold it down. F is a good key. See how the machine keeps printing out that letter? Well, the longer you hold down any character, letter, or number key, the longer it continues to print on the screen. Now, try using the right and left arrow keys located on the numerical keypad over here on the right and see what happens.
The longer you hold down the keys, the more the cursor keeps moving. Using the left and right arrow keys allows you to move the cursor through a word, and this is very handy for making corrections. If you use the left and right arrow keys to position the cursor somewhere in the middle of all those F's you just typed, you can erase the characters to the right by pressing down on the space bar. The longer you press it down, the more spaces it erases. When there are no characters left to erase, the space bar moves the cursor to the right. Now let's assume for a moment you misspelled a word and wanted to change a letter and make a correction. I know it's not too likely that you would have misspelled your name, although some people do. Right now, try experimenting with the left and right arrow keys and make a correction. Very good. I'd like to pass on a few words to you on the subject of mistakes and errors. Don't be afraid or embarrassed to make them. Your computer won't breathe a word to a soul. You see, getting used to using a computer requires you to make a certain amount of errors. You see, the machine is very specific about things like which letters, numbers, or symbols you should use. For example, on a typewriter, you could use a small L for the number 1, and it would look the same. But to a computer, a small L is only a small L, and the number 1 is only the number 1. When you make mistakes, the computer will tell you with an error message. It will give you the error message with either a series of numbers or words noting specifically what the error is all about. They are referred to as the error codes. In your IBM Disk Operating System Owner's Manual, in Section A in the back, you'll find a list of some of those error codes. What we'll do here is give you a rundown of what all the keys do. Then we'll add some software in the next segment and let you see some examples. First, I'm going to show you where things are on the keyboard, so that when we put a diskette with a program in the machine and boot up, you'll know where to put your fingers when the instructions are given. See how the letters and numbers of a traditional typewriter keyboard are right in place? All the white keys are exactly what they appear to be, typewriter keys with numbers, letters, or common symbols on them. A little over to the right, you'll notice another set of number keys. They're set up like a calculator keypad, and that's one of the important features of it. But those keys do other jobs, as signified by the extra words or symbols written on them, such as the arrow keys. The gray keys just to the left and right of the standard white keys are called the modifier keys, and the best way to describe them is one at a time. Take a look at the column of 5 keys, just over to the left of the main keys. On the top is the escape key. This is handy for editing, or stopping a program or function, or removing material. Below that is the tab key, the one with the arrows going in both directions. When you press the tab key, the cursor automatically moves to the right, just like your typewriter. Now under that is the key marked CTRL. That stands for control. The control key is always used with another key to perform a command or function, a very important key. The big arrow pointing straight up, that's the shift key. And just like the shift key on your typewriter, it changes lowercase letters to uppercase letters. Below that is the key marked Alt, A-L-T. That stands for alternate. Its most common use is in rebooting the machine, which I'll be explaining to you in a few minutes. Now, head up to the corner just to the right of the standard keyboard, and that arrow pointing backwards is the backspace key. Just like on your typewriter, it moves the cursor back one space at a time. Below that is the big key with the L-shaped arrow. It's a very important key. It's called the Enter key. But they've made it look like the return key of an electric typewriter because when you press it, it brings the cursor to the beginning of the next line. And on many programs, it signals the machine that you have completed putting in some information, and it's time for the computer to perform its functions. Now, look under that key, and you see a key marked PRTSC with an asterisk under it. PRTSC stands for print screen. So when you press it by itself, it puts an asterisk on the screen. But if you press it with either of the shift keys, it makes the printer print everything that is showing on the screen at that particular moment. Now look over to the left, and there's the other shift key. Below that is the caps lock key.
just like a typewriter caps lock key that locks all the letters into uppercase. However, when you are locked in uppercase and then use the Shift key, the letters come out in lowercase. Now, up above the number pad to the right is the num lock or number lock key. After you turn on your machine, the keys on the number pad perform various functions. But after pressing the num lock key, the number pad becomes just numbers. The num lock key toggles or alternates between the two kinds of number key actions. When in the various function modes, keys 2, 4, 6, and 8 are arrow keys that move the cursor around the screen in whatever direction the arrows are pointing on certain programs. The 9 key will move the text of a program up by 24 lines, and the 3 key will move the text of a program down by 24 lines. Those two measurements are what the machine calls a page, and that's what PG up or page up and PGDN or page down stand for. Page on the screen, that is. The 1 key will take the cursor to the end of the line, and the 7 key will take you home or put the cursor back in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. The 0 key also works as the insert key, which allows you to insert as many characters to the right as you need without having to rewrite the material you're working on. The decimal key becomes the delete key and deletes material or the character that the cursor is currently on. Then all of the characters slide right over one position to the left. These are all the keys you can redefine by pressing the num lock or number lock key. Notice that the two keys on the far right are a minus and a plus key for calculations. Now you might be wondering, where are the multiply and divide keys? Well, you use the asterisk as your multiplication key, and the slash key is for division. The key marked scroll lock and break may be ignored for now, but it gives you an example of the use of the control key. If you press the control key and hold it down while also pressing the scroll lock, you will have activated the brake key. And like the brakes on your car, it will stop whatever the machine is doing on certain programs. Now those 10 keys on the far left, they're marked F1 through F10, and they are function keys. You will be using them for programs you run, and when you do, their functions will change depending upon the program. The program instructions will tell you what job has been assigned to what key. At the end of this segment, check pages 3-1 to 3-10 of your IBM Operations Manual to see their reference guide on the keyboard. Now, let's talk about disk drives. They hold the software data and programs that you'll be moving in and out of your machine. In case you're not sure what programs are, they're like instructions that tell the machine what to do. Make sure you never open a disk drive and try and take a diskette out while the red light is on or while the diskette is moving inside. You might damage the diskette, and you won't do the drive a whole lot of good either. Before you boot up, I think you should know what a disk operating system is all about. A disk operating system, or DOS, pronounced like toss, is like an office manager who takes responsibility for seeing to it that certain files are kept, stored, and used in a certain way. The office manager gives the other clerical people in the office all the policies and directions on how to handle the work so it coordinates with your needs. Well, that's what your disk operating system does. Just as you direct your office manager to use certain uniform commands to the office staff that keeps control over how work is done, the DOS is a collection of programs that gives special commands to the machine and your programs to ensure the material you want is where you want it and the way you want it. When you put the DOS diskette in the machine and boot up, the cursor will appear next to a prompt. That's a little bracket-like thing on the left, like a prompter in a high school play who tells you that you're on or what's next. The prompt is asking for a command. It may be asking for some additional information first. In the next segment, I'll be telling you to boot up your machine with your disk operating system in the drive, and we'll get started with some hands-on usage. Just for fun, let's take a look at a diskette. I'll just open one up so you can see what's inside it. It's very tightly sealed, and it's supposed to be. I'm going to need a little help here. No problem. Hey, that did it. Now, here you are. Just a little record in a little record jacket, only you leave it in the jacket.
Don't you ever do this, because you won't be able to use the diskette again. In fact, you must make a point of not touching the diskette in any of these exposed locations. And when you're holding a diskette, be gentle. It'll be better for both you and the diskette if you hold it lightly on the outside edges. It won't be in danger of being damaged, and you won't be in danger of having to buy another one to replace it. I can just put this on my expense account, in case I ever get one. As you can see, it's just a little record in a paper sleeve. Notice how the sleeve has an oblong hole, and it's cut on both sides right here. Well, when the diskette is in the drive and spinning around, the drive reads the material off the diskette from here and moves it into the system in the central processing unit. This is also the place where the system writes material onto the disk. Also, notice this notch here on the side of the paper sleeve. Now, if you cover this notch with the little stickers that come with the diskettes and the labels, you see, just like that, it prevents the diskette from being erased accidentally. You can remove the sticker just like that if you ever decide to use the diskette for something else later. So, if you already have something on the diskette and you don't want to lose it, use the sticker to protect it. Also, label it accordingly. The labels come in the box with the diskettes. On the subject of labeling your diskettes, unless you're intending to first type or write the labels before you put them on the diskette, you should always use a felt tip pen to do your labeling. That way, you won't take a chance of damaging the diskette by pressing too hard on the surface. Your label should consist of the name you want to call the diskette, the program you're working with, and the date you started the diskette. In a little while, you'll be backing up or copying diskettes. You'll have a chance to see it all working. Backing up or copying diskettes is very important. You see, a floppy disk has a 40-hour life expectancy. Of course, when you read and write a diskette, the process only takes a few seconds. And when you divide that into the diskette's life expectancy, 40 hours could last you a very long time. But floppies can be fragile, and anything can get misplaced or mishandled. So making backup copies is like having carbon copies, or more accurately, duplicate originals. We suggest that you make 2 backups of every disk you have. One of them is for general use, and one is to be called a fire copy. That fire copy is the one you might want to store in a fireproof location, like a safe deposit box or some sort of fireproof box in a safe location away from the machine. Now, before we end this segment, I've got some new terms for you: bit and byte. A bit is an acronym for a binary digit, B-I-T. 8 of these little bits make a byte, B-Y-T-E. And a byte is equal to 1 character. So if you have 100 bytes, you have 100 characters. But with computers, even a blank space takes a byte. Computers only have a certain number of bytes available, and you don't want to waste space. Almost all the computers you'll see offer space in thousands of bytes, or kilobytes. That's the metric measurement of 1,000 bytes. Actually, 1,024 bytes. The number of bytes available in your random access memory, or main memory, RAM, tells you just how much material you can put into the machine's memory. If your machine has 64K, that means you have 64 kilobytes. And if you want to take that a step further, well, if you were to fill out a page of text, like a letter or a report, you would be able to put about 2,000 bytes, or 2K, on a page. That means a machine with 64K RAM could hold about 32 to 34 pages of text in the machine before you had to store it. Of course, some of that space might be taken by the program that helps you type in the text. And that brings us to storage. Very important. You see, the memory is like a blackboard that is only so big. And when you fill it up, you either have to store it away and bring out another blackboard, like a floppy disk, or you just erase it. Well, that's pretty close. You get the idea. And start all over again. Storing the blackboard is done by commanding the machine to save the material in the memory on a diskette, which you'll learn to do in just a little bit. A bit of time, that is. In a few minutes, we'll be booting up that DOS diskette in the A, or left drive, showing you the major commands and even running a useful program. But you've been working real hard and should be congratulated. First, review this last segment of CompuTutor. Then, relax before we begin using your machine in the next segment. Maybe you just want to get up and walk around or take a stretch or a look out the window in case it's raining outside. Of course, if it's raining inside, you could skip the window.
Welcome back to CompuTutor. In our last segment, we toured the equipment and ran down the keys on the keyboard. Now, let's get started loading that DOS diskette into the A drive of your system. That's the one you saw light up its little red light on your left. See, in case you're not sure, the disk drive to your left is the A drive. The second drive, or B drive, is to your right. The A drive is referred to as the default drive. First thing you want to do is make sure the lever-like door of the drive is open. In fact, all your drive doors should be left open except when a diskette has been put in. Now load the diskette with the label facing up and out. That's correct. Up and out. Just gently slide it in. Good. Now make sure you close that lever-like door of the drive. You see, the drive won't work unless the door is closed. And the only time you want to close a drive is when there's a diskette in it. In a moment, you'll have an opportunity to reboot your machine with a process called System Reset, rather than having to turn your computer off and on again. You will be learning a series of procedures and commands, or instructions to give the machine. And this is where the DOS, or Disk Operating System, comes in real handy. Some of the most important procedures and commands are called Directory, to let you see what's on the disk. Disk Copy, for copying or backing up entire diskettes. Format, for preparing the diskettes to hold information. After a diskette has been formatted, it can become a data diskette, or a diskette that holds programs, or the information that goes with programs. Copy, for copying single programs or pieces of data. Delete, for removing any and all files from a diskette. And check disk, to check a diskette and see how much material you have on it and how much available storage space remains. Also, you'll be learning a few basic language commands. Load, to load a program written in BASIC. Run, to run a program written in BASIC. And save, to save a program written in BASIC. Coming up in segment 6 of CompuTutor, that's the segment called Software, you'll have an opportunity to use those commands when you write a short program. First, let's boot up the machine with the Disk Operating System in the A drive. Remember, the process we're going to use to reboot the machine is called System Reset. And this is easy to do.
Simply push 3 keys at the same time. First, you hold down the Control key. Then hold down the alternate key. And while holding those two, press the Delete key. Then let go of all 3 keys. You can hear a beep, the disk drive whirring, and notice how the little red light is on? Good. The folks who use this IBM-PC refer to the reset procedure as CAD, or CADDing, C-A-D, Control, Alternate, and Delete. Now the machine takes a few seconds to get ready, and the first thing it wants you to do is give the date. The easiest way to approach that is to write in the date numerically with dashes in between. For example, let's say today is, September 9th, 1990. Type in a 9, then a dash, now another 9, and another dash, and the year 1990. Good. When you're done, press the Enter key. Now the machine is asking you for the time in military fashion. If you're not sure how to do that, I'll tell you how. Start by putting in the hour of the day. And if it's a number afternoon, just add 12 to the number of hours past noon. So if it's, say 3:25 in the afternoon, that's 12 plus 3, or 15. So type in 15 for the hours. Then type in a colon. Now type in the minutes, 25. This is the only time you will have to put in the time using the military time method. Now, press the Enter key. Good. Now I've got a kicker for you. With your IBM, you can skip both these questions by pressing the Enter key when each question comes up. If you haven't already put the date and time in as yet, press Enter twice and the machine will bypass that information. In the future, you may want that material in there just to have a date and time reference point for later on. Now your DOS is waiting to be of service to you. It's ready to use its Office Manager abilities to fulfill your commands. And here we come to the essence of the disk operating system and your machine. The DOS is designed to move those files on the diskette around to meet your needs. You see, people intending to write and store programs have a great many commands to learn. However, most of us only need to know the major commands that allow us to run already written programs. The first command you're going to learn is called directory. It allows you to see a directory of all the files and program data on the diskette. To see that directory, all you have to do is type in the letters D-I-R and then press the Enter key. Did you notice how the screen moved when you typed in the directory command and the information filled the screen? Well, that's called scrolling. The best explanation of scrolling I can think of is this. Back in ancient times, before the invention of the paper cutter and the copying machine, the written word was put on scrolls, much like this one, except of course they were older. A long piece of parchment or paper-like material, sometimes with pieces of wood on the top or the bottom. The scroll was rolled up and you would have to roll it in both directions to move the scroll up or down. Kind of noisy for the printed word. Well, information sometimes rolls up and down on your CRT just like that. So the smart folks who invented computers figured since it seemed like having a scroll in your computer, they would call it scrolling. All right, you've seen an example of scrolling. If you look at the directory, you'll see a series of columns. The program or file names are in the first column. In the second column, you see another 3 letters, sometimes EXE, which stands for executable, and COM, that stands for command. Sometimes you'll also see SYS, and that stands for system, and occasionally you'll see the 3 letters BAS, which stand for the basic language. These are often referred to as file name extensions. In the third column, you see a series of numbers that tell you the size of the file, that is to say, the actual number of bytes the file uses. The last 2 columns tell you the date and time the programs were put on the disk. Now we will look at a command that will copy the entire diskette, and we want to copy the entire diskette immediately. You see, the floppy diskettes could also be called flimsy diskettes. Although the life expectancy of the average disk is about 40 hours of real use, accidents do happen. First, we'll show you how to back up your program diskettes. Then after you learn how to format a diskette, you'll be able to use the same process to make copies of them. Get ready for the next command, called disk copy. Disk copy is an extremely important command because it is your insurance against losing an entire diskette. What we want to tell the machine is to take the material from drive A and copy all of it, the entire disk, over to a blank disk in drive B. Put a blank diskette in drive B. By the way, it's a good practice to put a label on the diskette first, even if you don't fill it out yet. That way, you won't mistake it for an unformatted diskette. And don't forget to close the lever-like door of the drive. Good. Type the word disk copy as one word. Then press the space bar once. Now type the letter A with a colon immediately following it. Now use the space bar again to type another space, and then type the letter B with a colon directly behind it too. Now you press the Enter key, and the machine will tell you to insert the source diskette in drive A and the target or the receiver diskette in drive B, and then press any key, like say the space bar, when you're ready to back up. This is a safety measure in case you had not yet inserted the blank disk. When you press that space bar, backup or the disk copy program will take over. When you typed in the A followed by the colon and the B followed by the colon, you told the machine to take the material from the diskette in the A drive to the diskette in the B drive. The colon is the code that refers to the drive itself. Notice how the machine shows you how the copying work is going. You have to be patient. It takes a few minutes. But when it's done, the machine will ask you if you want to make another copy. If you press the Y key for yes, the entire process of instructions would be repeated. If you press the N key for no, you will see the letter A and the prompt reappear. Go ahead and press N for no. And there's the prompt. Now take the original DOS diskette out of drive A and stash it someplace safe. Take the diskette out of drive B and using your felt tip pen, label it as your DOS backup and put it in drive A. Remembering to close the lever-like door of the drive. As a safety check, run a directory of it to be sure it's right. Type in dir, then press the Enter key. If the directory doesn't come up, replace the DOS diskette in drive A with the original DOS and put a blank diskette in drive B and repeat the instructions. The next and very important command is format. This is how you take a blank diskette and by the magic of the machine convert it into a formatted diskette, which is kind of like a big file cabinet with empty files inside of empty drawers ready to be filled up. Put a blank diskette in the B drive and don't forget to close the lever-like door of the drive. Good. Now type in the command word format, followed by a space, then type in the letter B with a colon immediately after it. You see, you're telling the machine that you want to format the diskette in the B drive. Now press the Enter key. Notice the screen tells you to place a blank diskette in drive B and press any key when you're ready to begin. Well, of course, you've already put your blank diskette in the B drive. This is just a reminder. You're ready, so go ahead and press the space bar. Now your machine is telling you that it is formatting the blank diskette, and in about a minute, you'll have a diskette ready to receive any kind of data or information. So please be patient while the process goes on. This is always a good time to take care of other business. Maybe you'd like to finish up that scale model of Detroit you've been making out of sugar cubes and toothpicks. On the other hand, maybe you don't. When the formatting is complete, the machine will tell you. It will also display for you the number of available and formatted bytes on the diskette. Just be patient. Not quite that patient. That's patient enough. Almost. Now the formatting is complete. You are shown the bytes total disk space and bytes available on disk, and a question, format another, yes or no. Press N for no. Good. In a couple of minutes, you're going to run one of the programs from the supplemental DOS diskette. You have quite a few there, and you'll begin to experience for yourself how simple it is to use a program. But first, you have two other commands to learn.
One command will copy any or all files from one disk to another, and the second command will actually delete any or all files from one diskette. Those two commands are called copy and delete. See, and you thought this computer lingo was tough. First, replace the DOS diskette in drive A with the supplemental diskette that came with it. Now, run a directory. Type in dir and press the Enter key. Good. Now you're going to copy a file from the DOS diskette in drive A to the data diskette in drive B. Just for fun, we'll use the mortgage file. Now, it has a name and an extension. When you're ordering it to be copied, you have to use both. Your DOS manual calls this the file spec. Well, that just stands for File Specification. Well, mortgage is the first name of the file. Since the file is already in disk drive A, and we want to go to disk drive B, type in the command word copy, a space, now the file name mortgage, now a period, and the file extension, which in this case is BAS for basic. Now type in another space, the letter B, immediately followed by a colon, and press the Enter key. And now the screen shows you that one copy has been filed. To make sure your copy of the mortgage program made it to the B drive, let's look at the directory of the B drive. Type in the command phrase dir, followed by a space, the letter B, immediately followed by a colon, and press the Enter key. And there it is, a directory of your file. Mortgage is right there. Now that you've finally gotten it copied, let's delete it. First, type in the command phrase del for delete, followed by a space. Now type in the letter B, followed by a colon, followed immediately by the file name mortgage, a period, and the three-letter file extension BAS for basic, and press the Enter key. You'll notice the process is very easy to do. Now we'll use the check disk command to check the disk in drive B to see how much space is available. But first, you'll have to replace your supplemental DOS diskette in the A drive with your backup copy of the DOS diskette. Go ahead and do that now. Now, type in the command phrase check disk, CHK DSK, a space, the letter B, followed of course by a colon, and press the Enter key. The screen shows you what space is used and what space is now available. If you ever see a reference to hidden files, that means that some directory files are not usually displayed. To find out more about hidden files, which we are not showing here but you may run into, check page C-3 in the appendix of your DOS manual. You have now used all of the major commands you'll need to back up programs and files, look at the directory, format diskettes, delete files,
and check the diskette. Oh, one last thought before we move on. When the machine directs you to give a command or add any information to a command, make sure you spell it and type it exactly as it appears. When you misspell a command or phrase, the machine does not recognize it, and so it's as though no real command has been given. Now, let's try out what we've learned by running a program. Just for fun, let's run a useful program. Once you've accomplished this, you can use the same technique for other programs. I think it would be a lot of fun to run the mortgage program from the DOS supplemental diskette. Mortgage is a basic or basic A program. The way to load this program is to type in the word basic A and press the Enter key. You would then be in the basic language, the language that the program is written in. Before you go any further, replace the DOS diskette in the A drive with the supplemental DOS diskette. Now type in the basic language command word load, a quotation mark, and the file name mortgage, and press the Enter key. When you see the flashing cursor, the machine is telling you it's ready. And now type in the basic language command word run and press the Enter key. And the program begins. Notice the instructions at the bottom of the screen. You must press the space bar to continue. Go ahead. Now you see that you have two options on this mortgage analysis program. You can do a payment comparison or an amortization. Just below that you find you can end the program by pressing the Escape key. Let's just run the amortization part of the program right now. So, press the number 2 key and see what comes next. The program wants you to tell it the amount of your mortgage. Do that. Let's say, $50,000. So type in 50,000 and press Enter. Now the program wants to know your interest rate from 1 to 35%. Let's say 12.6%. So type in a 12.6 and press Enter. Now the program asks you the number of years the mortgage runs. Let's say 20 years. So type in the number 20 and press Enter. And it calculates for you those accrued monthly mortgage payments. Now notice that it's kind enough to tell you that it's busy doing the calculations you've requested. Now it wants the beginning payment number of the 12-month period from 1 to 240 payments. So which of these payments do you want to start with? Let's say 1. So type in the number 1 and press Enter. Once you make it, the program will figure out the 12 actual payments that follow from that point. Press the space bar to continue. When you are ready to return to the disk operating system, you just press the Escape key twice. Well, you've worked your way through the disk operating system and even a useful program. Congratulations. You should run this segment again right now. We will be demonstrating the printing process in the next segment. Also, consult the owner's manual on pages 3-1 to 3-9 regarding the keyboard, and check Chapter 2 in the IBM Disk Operating System Manual for more information on DOS commands. You can check those pages and run this segment several times before we move on. It's okay with me. After all, beats waiting around in the box. So lonely here. No one calls, no one comes. Isn't even
Mom, I told you 4 segments ago I was going to be home late because I got things to... I love you, Mom. I got to go and your check is in the mail.
Welcome back to CompuTutor. So far, we've learned to assemble your IBM-PC and boot up with the DOS, or Disk Operating System. And we've been through the important commands and procedures, such as directory, or seeing what files are on the disk, copying a complete disk or single files, and removing a program or file, saving files, loading a program, running a program. We've even run a useful program. Even though we've seen the option on the program menu that allows you to order up a printed version of your mail list program, we've yet to talk about your printer options. Let's do that now. The purpose of your printer is to make a written or hard copy version of the material you've put into your computer. Certain printers are more appropriate for certain jobs. Most of you probably bought a printer when you bought your computer, so you should know there are really 2 kinds of printers you'd be interested in: dot matrix and letter quality. Dot matrix is the most common. The little printing mechanism inside is a series of pins, usually 5 across and 7 down, or 9 across and 9 down. That series of pins makes a matrix of little dots on the paper, hence the name dot matrix printer. When you use the print option of any program and the hard copy or printout begins, here's what happens. The printer takes the characters from the machine and then prints out the letters on paper in much the same way as lights in a stadium scoreboard show the scores. The more pins you have, the better looking your printout. The speed of most printers is measured by the number of characters, that's letters, numbers, and symbols, it can print out in a second. The number of characters per second, or CPS, on a good dot matrix printer can be as many as 400 or as little as 30. That means you could fill a page of copy anywhere from 10 seconds to just over a minute. This makes the dot matrix very handy when you want to get a hard copy or printout on a program very quickly. You can buy a dot matrix printer that will handle average size paper of 8.5 by 11. That translates out to about 60 to 132 characters across the page. Of course, that depends on the size of the characters and the kind of program you're running. You can also buy a dot matrix printer with a carriage large enough to handle paper 15 inches wide, with 132 characters or more across the page. Maybe you've seen some of those large printouts. Of course, the smaller the printer, the less it costs. And dot matrix printers are considerably less expensive than letter quality or daisy wheel printers. This daisy wheel or letter quality printer doesn't use the dot matrix formation. The characters are taken from this little wheel. Here, I'll show you. It's called a daisy wheel. The printout you get from a daisy wheel printer looks like it was typed on a typewriter, just like any piece of office correspondence. That's where the expression letter quality comes from. However, the letter quality printer takes longer to fill the page, and the speeds will vary from 10 to 55 characters per second, and therefore, you may be trading off speed for the appearance of the print and price. Now let's talk about loading paper into your printer. A common method is tractor feed. That looks like this. I want you to notice these holes on the sides of the paper. That's for the tractor system. You can easily pull these parts away from the page. Watch. See, there's nothing to it. So simple, so easy. Noticing that my fingers never leave my hands. There you have it, a standard sheet of paper. This is the system you're most likely to use with your dot matrix printer. Using this dot matrix printer, I'll give you an idea how the paper is loaded. By moving the paper through the back of your printer, it will catch on to the pins of the tractor feed device. Then you can roll it through with the roller handle for the platen. When you load paper into the printer, whether it is continuous run or tractor feed, or single sheet as in friction feed, you should always make sure that the top of the sheet is at the top of the printer head. This is called top of the form, or TOF. That will ensure that each sheet of paper that follows will be set to the top. And if you ever get into using some pre-printed forms, it's one of the best ways to keep your place on the form. Another nice thing about using tractor feed paper is that you can buy it in a box with, get ready for this, as much as 2,000 sheets in a box, which is eminently more than I have here. If you need paper with a letterhead,
You can find companies or stationers who'll make up this kind of paper with your letterhead on it. If blank paper will do the job for you, then you'll save money and time. With a letter quality printer, you'll probably use the friction feed process. That just means it loads like a typewriter. The paper is loaded into the daisy wheel just like a typewriter, and the tight friction from the platen or roller will hold it in place. Daisy wheel printers can also take a tractor feed paper, but you must purchase a tractor feed device. You can also buy a sheet feeding device that will allow you to use a large quantity of your regular stationery. Now let's go back to that DOS diskette and boot up and run the directory like you did in the last segment.
You will be using the technique of printing out the actual screen shown on the directory by pressing the Shift key down and holding it, and the PRTSC or print screen key. Here's an example of how the dot matrix will handle the job once the printer is turned on and ready.
Now here's how a letter quality printer would handle that same job. So whether it's an important business report or just a friendly letter, you have the option of having it look almost any way you want. You should know that it's possible with the dot matrix to rearrange the typeface or font by adding some program instructions. Or if you decide to go the route of the daisy wheel, you can choose, in some cases, between as many as 40 different typefaces or fonts. Some folks like to have both printers, the dot matrix for fast printouts, graphics, and charts, and the daisy wheel for correspondence and reports. After you've considered speed, noise, price, and quality, you should consider one other factor: interface. That's the piece of equipment that allows your computer to talk with your printer. You see, not all printers will interface or hook up with any computer. If you don't already have a list of compatible printers, ask your dealer to give you one. Oh, while I'm on the subject of compatible printers, there are two kinds of printer interfaces: serial and parallel. The difference is the way they handle characters. The serial printer, like a single-lane highway, takes only one bit of the byte or character at a time through the system. The parallel printer, like an 8-lane highway, carries 8 bits or a full byte or character through the line. Taking this a step further, the serial printer is a more standard hookup, whereas the parallel printer is a more unique hookup. And what that means to you is that you'll have to be very sure that the parallel printer and its patch cord are specifically intended for your computer and printer combination. The serial printer is more likely to hook up with any computer and printer combination, although it may take some switch adjustments that your dealer can help you with. Whichever printer you have or are intending to add to your system, just make sure you get a cable or patch cord that will fit your machine in the locations we showed you on the back of your computer back in segment 2. Finally, make sure you read through the owner's manual that came with your printer, and be sure you understand how to set the top of the form, or TOF. Most important, if you're not sure about your printer options, check with your local dealer, because different printers have different options. Getting the printed copy the way you want it is important, and you might find it helpful to check with more than one computer store. Also, check out a few good stationery stores to make sure you can get a good selection of tractor feed paper if you're buying a dot matrix printer. Now that we've covered setting up and booting up your computer, running a useful program with the disk operating system, and getting a hard copy version, we'll tie it all together in the next segment with the important element of software. You can review this segment right now, or if you like, deal yourself a little break time before we begin the final segment of CompuTutor. You're kidding. I can't believe this. I can't believe you keep doing this to me. We have to talk. We have to talk real seriously. This can't go on. Geez, some partner, I thought this was just a friendly game, you know, for fun, to kill time. All right. With doubles for gin on the spades. How much do I owe you? That much, huh? Got it. Welcome back to CompuTutor. Once again, I congratulate you. You've really covered a lot of ground learning just how simple it is to use your hardware and how to operate the software. Software is what your computer is all about. Just like your video cassette player would be of little value to you without any video cassettes to play, such is the case with your computer. Earlier on in segment 4, I told you that we would talk at greater length about software and programs. Well, this is that time. It's not necessary to know how to write programs to get value out of your computer. In fact, out of any given group of 100 computer users, that's you, only 5 people will have any interest in writing programs. More than likely, you'll be using software or programs that have already been written and published to fulfill your needs. You should know there are virtually thousands of different software programs, from games to accounts receivable and accounts payable. However, the 3 most commonly used and in-demand kinds of software are calc, or the electronic spreadsheet, word processing, and database management. At some time or another, these are the 3 kinds of software you'll probably be looking to use on your personal microcomputer. I'd like to tell you just a bit about them. Let's start with calc. Calc is short for calculations, and it's an electronic worksheet. You would use this the same way you might use a sheet of columned paper for working out things like simple budgets or projected business costs. Maybe you just want to keep a record of your normal home expenses or business costs. If you didn't have a computer, you might go to a stationery store and buy one of these columned pads. Well, that's what a calc program is, an electronic columned pad. Now, if you filled out one of these pads and then discovered that some of your figures had to be changed for any reason, you would have to start all over again and fill out a new sheet. With a calc program in your computer, you just change whatever figure you need to change, and the computer will fix up the rest of the pad. And even though you can only see a few columns over and a few rows down the page, you can get over 63 columns across and 255 down, or more. You just have to imagine that you're holding a magnifying glass over a columned page, highlighting the area you're working on. Well, when you look at the CRT, you're focusing on the part of the pad you really want to see. Financial professionals use these worksheets to prepare statements, budgets, compute ratios, and modify projections in seconds rather than hours or days. You can use the same program just as easily to figure out your monthly food budget, list your expenses, or project your earnings and costs on a project. So much for calc. Then there's database management. Sounds like a pretty impressive program. And when you consider what a simple program it is to use, it's pretty impressive. I'll give you an example of what it is and how it works. Think of that filing cabinet you have at home or in the office. It's filled with drawers that are filled with labeled file folders that are filled with files. It takes up a lot of space, and if you accidentally put the wrong piece of paper in the wrong file folder and that in the wrong drawer, days, weeks, and months could go by before you find what's missing. And what if you need information from several different files grouped together in a particular arrangement? More time and more work. What can a database management program do for you? I'll give you an example. Suppose you have a collection of magazines and professional journals. However, your collection is spread out all over the house and all over the office. Suddenly, you're looking for an article on butterfly collecting that you read last summer. With your database manager program, you will have listed all the magazines you got in that year. You've listed the month you received them, the table of contents, and where you put them all. You simply command the program to scan for the word butterfly, because you're not even sure of the title of the article. The scan might even turn up some other articles on collecting that you'd missed or forgotten. Now here's another thought. Your Christmas list or file cards, virtually anything you want to keep track of fits into a database management program. It's not that much trouble to keep the information in the computer. It's a nice card.
I must remember to send it. You could type it in a little at a time or all at once. It doesn't really matter, because once it's in there to stay, and you can start using it immediately. Now, word processing is probably the most popular program for your microcomputer because it allows you to turn your computer into an electric typewriter that does a whole lot more than any electric typewriter. You could write anything from a shopping list to the great American novel, fast and cheap. You see, the word processing program uses a process called text editing. That just means you can edit, delete, change format, move entire blocks of copy and correct it dozens of times, search for a specific word or phrase and store it forever on disk, or you can reshape it 150 times if you'd like without putting 149 pieces of crumpled up paper in the wastebasket. In fact, waste is a word you will rarely use when you get a word processing program for your IBM-PC, and typing will never again be the same. Beyond these three programs are many more. In fact, well over 1,000 different kinds of computer programs you can use to make your work go faster and your spare time last longer. To learn more about the kind of software that might fit your needs, check in with your local computer or software store. Now that we've covered the more popular software programs, you'll find it helpful in understanding all software if you have a hands-on idea of how it is written and how it works. There are many languages that are used for writing software. You've heard us talk about BASIC, Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. So we're going to teach you how to write a very simple program in BASIC. Now don't worry, there are only 4 lines in this program and very few terms to learn. This little program is designed to convert your age from years to months. Now, here are some ground rules about basic programs. There are a series of instructions that tell the computer to do things in a certain order. So each line of instruction is numbered. That way the computer will know what instruction is to be taken first, second, and third, and so on. Here's what the actual program looks like written in the BASIC language. Notice how the lines are numbered 10, 20, 30, and 40 instead of 1, 2, 3, and 4? Well, very often programmers write programs numbered that way in case they want to add a line in between later for more instructions. The first line is an input statement. That's why it says input right after the number, because you're going to put in some information. In quotation marks is a message that will be put on your screen before you type in your input. The statement asks you to enter your age in years and months. So if you're 25 years old in 6 months, you would type in the number 25, a comma, the number 6. When we run this program in a few minutes, you'll see what we mean. The semicolon next to the last quotation mark tells the computer there's more information coming. The Y, followed by a comma, and the M are what is called variables. That just means that the values assigned to those letters can vary, just like people's ages can vary. The Y stands for years, and the M stands for months. The next line, number 20, looks like an algebraic equation, and it is. X, the unknown, will be equal to Y, or years, multiplied by 12, the number of months in a year, plus M, or the number of leftover months. Notice we use an asterisk for the multiplication sign because that's the way the computer understands it. The next line, numbered 30, is a print statement. That means it will print information on the screen. The first line, the input statement, will also print information on the screen, but it requires you to put in some information. The print statement doesn't require you to add anything. At the end of the print statement, which looks very much like the input statement, is a semicolon, telling the machine there's more information to come, and the X is that information. Remember to put in a blank space just the same way and for the same reasons you did in the first line, to leave an extra space and make it easier to read when you run the program. You'll see that in a couple of minutes. Also, don't forget we've already told the computer that regardless of what numbers are put in for your age in years and months, X will be equal to the number of years multiplied by 12, the number of months in a year, added to the number of leftover months before your next birthday. The last statement, numbered 40, just says end, and that means we're at the end of the program. We'll leave that program up on the screen so you can try it out. Boot up your machine with your disk operating system, then type in the word BASIC-A, B-A-S-I-C-A, and press the Enter key. Once you have the BASIC language loaded into the machine, you don't need to load and run any programs. Go ahead and copy the 4-line program into your computer, remembering to press the Enter key after you've typed each line of instruction or program. Have you finished? If your version doesn't look like what's up here on this screen, press the Enter key and type in the word New, N-E-W, press the Enter key again, and try writing the program, remembering to press the Enter key at the end of each line. If you need to see the program again, rewind this section of the segment and view it one more time. When you're ready, type in the word Run and see what happens. Then press the Enter key. First, the machine asks you to put in your age in years and leftover months, leaving a comma between the number of years and months. Go ahead. Good. Now press the Enter key. And the machine now tells you your age in months. Granted, it's a simple application of program writing, but this should give you an idea of how programs can be written in a general nature and still be able to be made very specific to your needs. Converting your age in years to months is general, but your age is what is specific. By the way, next time you're at your computer store, you might ask your dealer, what are the best of the microcomputer magazines for your computer? You don't have to understand all the articles in Byte or Personal Computing to appreciate the ads that keep you up to date on the hard facts about software.
Couple of quick hints to keep in mind when you're shopping for software. Make sure you can try it out on a version of your machine before you buy it. Most stores will allow you to do so. That's another good reason for checking in with the store where you bought your IBM-PC microcomputer. And when you do find a piece of software that meets your needs, make sure that you make a backup copy right away. And now a few final notes on CompuTutor. No single book or tutorial will ever meet all of your needs. And the best person to teach you about your computer and your software is you. Trial and error is still the best teacher. The intention of CompuTutor is to give you enough information to get your computer online and to get you started. The more you run this program, the more you'll get out of it. After all, look at what you've accomplished in a relatively short period of time. You've learned to assemble your equipment, boot up your computer, load and operate the disk operating system, run and save programs, operate your printer, and even write a piece of software. And your future is even brighter. As you continue to master new programs and new peripherals, you'll discover that your machine is merely a means to an end. It's a device that allows you to do the things you want and the thing you do best. Make decisions based on having information readily available. In many ways, you are well beyond novice. And the next time you see a computer article in a magazine or newspaper, or hear people talking about their systems, you can participate from the experience of being a user. Not only does CompuTutor congratulate you, we graduate you. What are you, the Lawrence Welk of the integrated circuit? Relax, this thing doesn't even come with a prom.